I always felt that sailors were the link in the great chain holding together all the inhabitants of the world. It was for that reason that I chose to devote my life to the betterment of the sailors in the port of Honolulu in the Sandwich Islands. I am the Reverend Samuel Chenery Damon, and for some 43 years I was the Seamen's chaplain here in the port. I was born in 1815 in Holden, Massachusetts. I spent my youth, as almost all men did, studying the Word of the Lord. I disagreed, however, with many of my contemporaries, those harsh, unyielding men who believed the world was going to come to a violent end, wrapped in cleansing fire, as prophesied in the book of Revelation. I always believed that this rebirth, this new world, would be a renaissance unlike any that we had seen before. A world renovated, improved, beautified by cities, towns, hamlets. A world subdued by the leveling of mountains, the filling of valleys, the subduing of the jungles, and the irrigation of the sandy wastes. 10,000 scientific discoveries would open the way for this new world. Rulers would be benefactors, making good laws for the many, improving social and civil conditions. Be loyal, have a right heart, offer personal service, and all this would begin to come to pass. These beliefs grew, evolved, and finally matured when I graduated from the Andover Theological Seminary in 1841. I then began preparing myself for a great adventure. I was to sail to India to be a missionary and spread the word of the Lord to the good people there. I pored over old volumes. I studied the Tamil language when I received an urgent letter from the Seamen's chaplain here in the port. He desperately needed a replacement because of his declining health, and he believed that I was more than adequate for the job. His letter outlined my duties. The special object of your solicitude, prayers, and efforts will be the sons of the ocean, he said. Here then, in this commercial and central position between the coasts of Asia and America, you are to stand erect as a minister of Jesus Christ. This position suited me well. I was ordained in September 1841, married my lovely wife, Julia Mills Damon, in October, and then we set off for the Sandwich Isles. We arrived in this strange and beautiful place almost a year later. It was not until 1842 that I first saw the place that I was to call home for the next 40-some years. The American Seamen's Friends Society had built a Seamen's chapel connected to Bethel Church for the sailors visiting the port. For many years, it was the only public place of regular worship in the English language in the islands. In other words, my services were very much in the air. From 1842 until 1867, 6,000 sailors annually came into the port. During these 25 years, my labors were abundant and sometimes beyond my strength. But I could not let this overwhelming task darken my humor. A chaplain should be a hopeful man, not inclined to look upon things that are dark. I grew to love my seafaring brothers, but oh, the mischief that they could get into. How many times was I at the station house, prison, the marshal's office, or the boarding houses interceding on behalf of my brothers? Once I took a man out of prison and paid his prison fee of $20 out of my own pocket. I also assisted with the correspondence between the sailors and their relatives, but by itself was almost a full-time job. Every ship brought mail filled with inquiries about sailors in the Pacific. I am proud to say that each and every letter was answered. The temptation of strong drink was one of the the greatest blights afflicting both the good sailors as well as the natives of this island. Foreigners, particularly the French, were making a fortune with their liquor shipments and their detestable seaside grog shops, preying on the souls of these poor people. I firmly believe that this problem was due to a lack of education, like many problems. Now, my missionary brethren had done an exemplary job of forming schools and seminaries to teach people of all classes and all races. It's clear to me that we need a more immediate, direct source of useful information. So, in 1843, I had inspiration. I began to publish a monthly newspaper for sailors, A Friend. It would have news from both America and England. We printed sermons, poetry, ship arrivals, departures, local news, even editorials. Now, the paper had as a neighborhood across the globe. Because we were in the middle of the battle for supply. I printed countless articles on evil of drink and our victories of drink. To my great joy, on August 17, 1843, a constitution declared, which was unanimously adopted by a body of citizens in Honolulu who called themselves the Hawaiian Total Abstinence Union. Now, I doubt, without the influence of a friend, that ever was. To me, the greatest result of our efforts was the triumphant advancement of temperance among the whalers. In December 1844, we were passing out temperance pamphlets in the port, and we were invited aboard an American whaling ship by the name of Navy. Imagine our pleasant surprise when the first officer, Mr. Damon, pointed to a pledge on the wall with the signatures of all hands, except for two, wonderfully framed and protected. Temperance had established a foothold among the sailors. During the 41 years I served as editor of The Friend, we published between 500,000 and 1 million copies, all of which I personally delivered. Little changed over the years, except that my whale oil lamp was replaced for fuel with kerosene, a change that probably single-handedly accounted for the demise of the American whaling industry, since I was a major customer of that oil. Thousands of sailors and foreigners came to the port every year, and so oftentimes they were down on their luck, they were ill, they were poor, and with no place to call their own, anger and desperation often consumed. In the fall of 1852, for example, the Northern Fleet had returned to Honolulu filled with bone and whale oil, very successful season. 200 ships were packed into the harbor, and over 3,000 sailors wandered the port. Predicted goodness, misbehavior, and conflict with the authorities and the sailors ensued. On November 8th, a particularly quarrelsome sailor by the name of Henry Burns was arrested and locked up at the fort for disorderly conduct for his drunkenness. Before I could get to him to counsel him, a scuffle broke out. In the darkness of the cell, the jailer swung his club in desperation, cracking Burns on the head, and instantly ending in that fight. Well, the news of this got out, the angry sailors were in the streets. They attacked the police headquarters, they routed the officers, they even burned down the building. At some point in the night, they decided that the local government was to blame. So they organized a group of 50 men who were marching up here, Nu'uanu Valley, a mob of 50. They went to the home of Dr. Garrett Judd, who was then the Minister of Finance. Fortunately, Dr. Judd was able to placate the mob and disperse them and no further damage was. The government, however, quickly ordered all the sailors to their ships indefinitely in regard of the authorities. I did my best to visit every ship in the harbor to try to calm the sailors. And an idea occurred to me. The sailors needed a place to call their home in Honolulu. In 1854, I was very proud to announce the completion of the planning for a sailor's home in Honolulu. The project was to cost $15,000, not a small sum, but by June of 1855, we were able to raise $5,000 from the good citizens of Honolulu to support their seafaring home. Construction began on a beautiful 3-story building facing Merchant Street next to Bethel Church. 60 days later, the cornerstone was ready, and King Kamehameha IV attended the ceremony and prayed the project as follows. The hardships with which the sailor contends and the danger which he braves brings us ease and security. Had he never steered his ship into our waters, Honolulu might simply have retained its position as a fishing village, or have become by this time a deserted beach. The more time that I spent here in the islands, the more impressed I was by the kindness and intelligence of the natives. Here, different races live together in peace and harmony. We confidently believe that that would continue to be the case so long as we continue to treat a man as a man, regardless of race or color. If Hawaiian political independence were preserved, I believe Christianity would flourish in the islands. I staunchly oppose the American annexation of the islands. I believe that we have misinterpreted this American principle of manifest destiny. Perhaps it did not refer to political or economic domination, but rather to the destiny of moral example. Christianity in doctrine and practice, combined with suitable education, could break down barriers and permit the raising of a society united in itself. For years, I rejoiced in observing the changes happening in the islands throughout the Pacific and on the west coast of North America. I traveled extensively to China, to England, to Palestine, to Egypt, to Greece. But no travel gave me such pause as the travels I made in America. The mountains and plains of Oregon, the burgeoning towns of California, this was where the future of this world was being made. Here was the wealth, here was the tide of immigration, and that tide would not be stayed. America had a noble mission, a godly mission. We had to serve as a shining example to our brothers and sisters in distant places across the sea. My days on earth ended February 7th, 1995. At the end of the quarter-century of work, I'd married 180 couples, baptized over 175 babies, and officiated at the funerals of over 600 women. I often thought back on my life and wondered how it could be different. What would have happened to me if I had gone to Asia? Could I have helped those women? The right decision from the Reverend. Then I looked at the faces of the men under my care, those hard men of the sea. I saw them smile and wave at me. I saw them pray on Sunday service. No, my place was always here. During those years, I found those wandering, impulsive, thoughtless men accessible when I sought them out.